New York City, the greatest city in the world, that's what we like to call it. New York City has seen its skyline change, becoming a more dense city. This change has reached the outer boroughs, with Brooklyn, Queens, and the Bronx all experiencing massive growth and change. The population of New York City has gone from 7.4 million in 1999 to 8.2 million in 2024. That's an increase of almost 11%. With more people comes more modes of transportation: bikes, motorcycles, and cars. The amount of cars in the city has increased by 12% from 2012 to 2024 to just over 2 million cars, with another 2 million bikes. But because New York City's socioeconomic identity is middle class, how people commute daily usually falls to the most cost-effective option, which is public transportation. The MTA, or the Metropolitan Transportation Authority of New York City, the buses and the trains, the MTA is over 60 years old and it handles bridges, tunnels, and more. Over the years, the MTA has worked on some large capital projects, and there has been a long history of funds, mismanagement, fare increases, and declining services. So with the idea of funding the MTA even further, they have pushed on vehicles a congestion toll. Now, my name is Zaire Baptiste. I'm born and raised in Brooklyn. I'm a business owner in Brooklyn, and I've spent much of my life riding the bus and the train. But for the last almost 8 years, I've replaced riding the train with driving and riding my bike. And to be honest, no matter how much traffic, it's still more peaceful of a commute for me. Then I got wind of the MTA's desire to impose congestion pricing on the residents of the city, and I saw that the MTA was looking to engage the public about it. And I've been in opposition, although I support trying to help the MTA and try to better the transit service in the city. The MTA needs to do better at what they're doing, and I don't agree with putting that cost on New York City drivers. Now, in New York City, the CBD, or the Central Business District, starts as farthest south on the island and extends from east to west up to 60th Street, excluding the FDR Drive and the West Side Highway. The cost would range from $15 to $27 for trucks and $9 per day for cars, or more if you don't have an Easy Pass. And as of January 5th, all of the tolls and the bridges and tunnels in New York City had a price increase as well. So the Verrazano Bridge went to $16 and $20 if you don't have an Easy Pass. The Hugh Carey Tunnel, $13, $20 without an Easy Pass. The Lincoln and Holland Tunnel are now $22, almost $28 without an Easy Pass. The Brooklyn, Manhattan, and Williamsburg Bridge, all at $9, $13.50 without an Easy Pass. The Queens Midtown Tunnel, $13, $20 without an Easy Pass. And the 59th Street Bridge, $9, $13.50 without an Easy Pass. So in theory, the MTA needs to fund their transit improvement capital projects and initiatives that will make the transit authority more efficient for its ridership with congestion pricing. Now, if you're not familiar with tolls and what they're used for, then I'm going to school you. When a municipality wanted to create a capital project such as building a roadway, the municipality would either handle the construction or bring in a private builder. The municipality would put up some of the initial capital through taxes and/or existing budget. The remainder of the cost would be deferred. Tolls were put in place to pay for the projects with interest to construction companies who built roadways, and some of the money would be earmarked for maintenance and repairs. And once the roadway was paid for and the debt satisfied, the toll was technically supposed to be removed, but it's a money printing machine, so the tolls have remained. In the early 1900s, as car culture increased, paved roads became necessary, mostly for mail delivery and military use. And as soldiers returned with the ability to buy a home, family car culture began. And with this, more capital road projects and tolls. A 2017 report from American Transportation Research Institute, which is the nonprofit arm of the American Trucking Association, found that tolls were the least effective means of funding national highways, yet tolls still remain. And here's why. In 1916, the Federal Road Act was created that said that roads would not be tolled if they were public and mail carriers used them. And roads would be paid for with federal funding. So then we fast forward to 1921, half of American families had vehicles, so more roads were being built, and some were funded through tolls. In 1956, the Federal Highway Act was created that said that all roads would be paid for through federal funding up to 90%, and the state would be responsible for the other 10%. Now, that allowed tolls to remain in place from the Federal Road Act of 1916. Let's fast forward again to the 1990s. Private sector tolling and the Intermodal Surface Transportation Efficiency Act is born, which permitted the tolling of roads that was previously banned. Now, you'd be able to implement fees after reconstruction. So really, if you wanted to come in, do some work on a road, you were actually then allowed to open up your own toll on this road. Now, this provision connected and incentivized road improvements as a means to obtaining toll revenue. The private sector recognized that tolling was a big business. So in 1996, they lobbied for the passage of the Transportation Equity Act for the 21st century. Now, this pumped billions of dollars into state coffers for road projects, and with it, states began to delve further into building more toll roads. Now, private companies started investing their own money into building toll roads. So from 1994 to 2006, private investors invested over $21 billion in 43 toll facilities across the country. Now, drivers are being asked again to pay another toll, yet this one is not for roads, but to fund the MTA and to foot the bill of its executives' speculative initiatives like the track protectors or its reckless mismanagement of funds. And it has gotten support from people and organizations that are anti-automobile. And for those that say that car owners don't pay their fair share, let's take a look at this. There are over 2 million vehicles in New York City. Every year we pay for car inspections, which are approximately $35. It's $70 million in revenue. Every 2 years we renew our registration, approximately $150, $300 million in revenue. Every 10 years we renew our license, $180, $360 million over the 10 years, which is $36 million yearly. 6 days a week we pay parking meters, 100% to the city, $545 million in revenue. Parking garage revenue is $1.3 billion yearly, 10% to the city, another $130 million. New York City gas station revenue, $12 billion, with the city and state getting 47 cents out of that, another $564 million. And then every year, parking violations, over $1 billion in revenue to the city. Every day, cars are booted or towed. There's another $20 million as of 2023. Insurance premiums are sky high in New York City, with the average full coverage vehicle costing over $5,000, generating over $5.7 billion in insurance. And that's me being generous and just factoring in half of the 2 million cars in the city, which per year gives the city another $260 million. Car repair shops making annually $4 billion in New York City, which gets 8%, another $320 million. And these drivers are sometimes described as killers, driving death machines, contribute to billions of dollars in annual revenue to New York City. $3.2 billion to be precise, and this is before congestion pricing. Now, congestion pricing is not a new concept and has been utilized in other regions of the country and the world, but not always finding success in its main objective, which is easing congestion. Now, London is used as a successful case study of congestion pricing, yet congestion pricing has not fully eased the congestion. Actually, by London's own account, the congestion is even worse, and there are talks of expanding congestion pricing outside of London's central business district. Also, London had the common sense to not toll its drivers all day, opting for a more favorable 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. But in London, I have to say, they had a real concrete plan on how tolling funds would be used to improve public transportation in the city. This is more than we can say about the MTA. And since we are here, let's discuss the MTA, the Metropolitan Transit Authority. The MTA receives $7 billion in federal funding, and they make over $6 billion a year in fare box and toll revenue. But now they're looking to add another $15 billion, which you see the CBD tolling actually takes most of the pie chart right now. So they are really looking for this congestion pricing to really be like the foundation of MTA revenue. The MTA executive salaries and mismanagement is documented, and it's the biggest red flag to allowing them another source of free money. We cannot trust the MTA to do the right thing without more non-MTA oversight. The MTA has cut service, increased fares, and received additional federal funding and still has declining service, deteriorating infrastructures, and safety concerns. If the billions they received in the past didn't make a difference, what is this new toll going to do now? The current MTA situation has nothing to do with money and more to do with its leadership and how it runs the MTA and spends the money, which is New York taxpayer funds. Now, the MTA claims congestion pricing is to curb congestion and automobile traffic, but if their purpose is to raise funds, deterring car traffic is what they don't want. The MTA wants to make that toll money, so this has little to do with curbing congestion. That angle was used to gain the support of organizations and entities that have long been against automobile drivers in the city. And here is what else they don't tell you. So much of the congestion that we speak of, and yes, I can agree, traffic can be horrible at times, the city has created it. They created a problem and now want to charge you for what they are calling a solution. The tightening of streets through lane closures leave emergency vehicles or any vehicle with no option to move, which is completely dangerous. On 8th Avenue and 34th Street, which is one of the busiest thoroughfares in New York City, close to Herald Square, Madison Square Garden, Penn Station, all of these things, we originally had 10-foot lanes of 4 on 8th Avenue, which accommodated the vast amount of vehicles that moved. Now that 4 lanes has been reduced to 2 lanes. We have a sidewalk, we have our bus lane, which is much needed. We went from 4 lanes of travel to 2 lanes of travel. We have a parking lane, then we have taken a lane away to create a bike lane, which is needed. But now we have a painted sidewalk with islands, so a secondary sidewalk for people to walk on that is not even being fully utilized. Now, construction in New York City as a whole has tremendously increased congestion. The city has allowed 2 to 3 developers to build at the same time on a single street, causing congestion and destroying the flow of traffic. Now here, where I live in Brooklyn, downtown Brooklyn, we have 3 large-scale building projects going up, all over 30 stories, and every day we find ourselves with dump trucks, cement mixers sitting in the bus lane. So now the bus can't let off its passengers safely, so they have to let the passengers off in the street, and that blocks all the upcoming traffic. That traffic goes back from neighborhoods like Fort Greene into Clinton Hills into Bed-Stuy, and it's a continuous congestion issue that we're facing, but it's not spoken about. There are catalysts to why there are actually traffic in New York City, and it's not always to do with just drivers. And now the delivery truck situation that we have as well is a problem. Delivery trucks now have to block whole lanes to make deliveries because they don't have the space that they used to. In Brooklyn, where I live, on Myrtle and Flatbush Avenue, there's a store that when they get a delivery 2 to 3 times a week, it kills the traffic. It kills the traffic all the way up Flatbush Avenue for at least 3 miles, all the way up to Prospect Park. And when you get there, you can see there is always a delivery truck that is causing that traffic. And then once you're past that, everything's good. So we need to speak more about the reasons that this congestion exists, more so than just blaming drivers. So much of this congestion has to do with the catalysts that are in place. Congestion itself is merely the result of these things. So because of this congestion, the MTA would rather you park your cars and take the bus or the train. Well, there's a reason that that's not the best option. The MTA can't accommodate its existing ridership. Trains and buses are packed to capacity, the service is being cut, and it's not entirely structurally reliable, as we have seen with recent derailments. Now, if 500,000 new drivers parked their cars, single people, couples, families, stopped driving, and we all took the bus or the train, the system would collapse. Because there is no plan in place for handling this increased ridership should drivers convert to public transit, which is why congestion pricing has little to do with easing traffic and more to do with printing money. Now, another flag is how long it usually takes the MTA to complete these capital projects. And the money being spent, some of their projects have taken 10 to 30 years, so put this into perspective. The congestion issues which have been created and not addressed responsibly finds that tolling its drivers will solve the problem. But also, the MTA needs more money and more money and more money, so the proceeds then go to them. No one takes into account what the millions of dollars that drivers already pay yearly outside of paying for owning or leasing their car. Congestion pricing is sold to the public as a safety issue, environmental issue, and a quality of life enhancement. Yet the mass transit system is where we see some of the biggest quality of life issues. The crime problem is a major deterrent that's not addressed. The lack of reliable service, the infrastructure issues causing floods, derailments, power outages, and countless other deterring issues. Now, the MTA wants us to stop driving, but they need us to drive through their tolls so they can create the revenue needed to make the transit authority better. And we can all agree it does need to be better. But if we stop driving, they can't accommodate us anyway. And it puts more of a burden on the MTA employees, and the New Yorkers who really rely on mass transit. Most of the ridership will never see any of the capital improvements because of the bureaucracy of the city and the MTA. So good luck on that. And we've seen the failure of the subway gates, the new turnstiles, the faulty train cars, and the $30 million spent on one set of stairs in one station, and not to mention the consulting firms who guide the MTA. Now, I'm not opposed to having drivers contribute. I'm not. We should all pay our fair share to make the city better, but blaming drivers and taxing drivers to repair a system that we have already lost faith in is ridiculous. Also, New York City runs on a social currency, and cars are going nowhere. There's just a certain sector of New Yorkers that are not opting to get on the train. Now, this is the latest money grab, and if you don't believe it, when we had our committee meetings, I was the only one to raise the question, if this is about congestion, why is the toll 24 hours? There is no 24-hour congestion. Even London has a time frame for their toll. That's when it was clear. Congestion pricing was never about the residents of New York. It was about creating another revenue stream off the backs of the residents of New York City, New Jersey, and Connecticut. Now, to add insult to injury, the MTA president held a sign unveiling for congestion pricing. Now, really? And people are out here cheering that to start the new year. New Yorkers are getting taxed. This is a weird behavior to me. A party to celebrate that we have to pay more money to live in this city, and there's a lift and an operator, so I'm sure there's security out there and some sort of reception probably happened afterwards or before. All of this costs money. The sign was already up there at 12 a.m. The toll began. So what did the MTA choose to do? Spend money, having a party to celebrate it. And these are the people we are giving $15 billion extra dollars to. The city is going out bad. And don't say that we didn't warn you.